hit a show, I call it, and I think we're about to all be exposed to something that if we're not diabetic ourselves or on our way to becoming one, we certainly know one or numbers of them. It's been about 3 years ago now since on my radio show I had a guest. I'll never forget his name. His name is Tom Smith. Tom Smith, in a similar but not exactly similar fashion, learned that he was a diabetic and was not too happy when his doctors told him that he would have to be on medicine for the rest of his life. In any other group of people, this seems to be just understood to be so, but there's something with you engineers. I don't know what it is. Something's with these engineers, because it didn't sit well with Tom. And Tom just went home and said, no, I can fix this. And so he told me 3 years ago that he went and applied what he learned in engineering school and what he used every day as his engineering job to go ahead and find out how to fix that disease, which he certainly did it himself. He told that story on our radio show. He came out with a workbook at the time, and I just was enthralled by his message, and many of you were too, because that workbook has still remained a classic in this region. Although, unfortunately, we can't ever see Tom because of the sickly wife. He's up in Nevada or someplace, and I haven't seen or heard from him since. Now, there's the preliminary story. Take me back to 2 weeks ago, when Sylvia, in the course of doing what we always do together, try to bring you the shows of the guests that she'll have at the Freedom of Choice group. And that's when the name of the gentleman first came to my attention that you're going to be hearing today. And at the time I didn't know, but I was to find out probably within 24 hours that, and I'll let him tell his own story, but the part I want to mention that he might not is that another engineer, an engineer, confronted with a medical travesty, said, you know what, I don't think so. I'm going to figure this one out myself too. And in a rather a different way, but yet solving the problem, this engineer, I believe, has done it. I believe you need to hear that message, and that's the best preliminary I can give anybody coming up on stage. It really is a pleasure to have him here with us today. You'll be hearing a lot of good things about Mr. DeWayne McCulley in the near future. DeWayne? Thanks for coming forward.
Thank you. And again, I would like to thank Sylvia for tricking me into coming. She convinced me that I should come to Butler and I should come to Pittsburgh and meet some great people, but I thought it was just her being a little bit over enthusiastic. And but I met some great people up in Butler last week, and today I've met some more great people, so I consider myself blessed to have met many of you. One of the questions that I'm always asked is, DeWayne, how did you beat diabetes? And there's 3 reasons. Number 1 is God. People don't like talking about God, but you can't leave God out of the equation. Number 2 is my mother, and if you knew my mother, you'd understand. And number 3 is my daughter. And I guess the 4th reason, if I listen to Dr. Courtney, I guess my engineering background probably had something to do with this as well. And so today I'm going to try to take an 8-hour workshop and try to hit some highlights during the next 30 minutes or so, and maybe leave some time for some questions and answers. The original presentation that I developed several months ago was basically a slide presentation. And my daughter said, Dad, your slides are boring. You need some music. And I couldn't think of any music that would be appropriate for talking about diabetes. But the Superman theme fits very well because part of my protocol addresses the Super Meal program. And so we're going to discuss some aspects relative to that program, some of the biomarkers, and also, again, the biology of the disease diabetes. But before I get started, let me just try to recap my story. In March of 2002, I went into a diabetic coma. I was diagnosed with a specific condition known as a non-contagic hyperglycemic hyperosmolar coma. Now, when I came out of the coma, the doctor said, DeWayne, we got some good news and we got some bad news. The good news is that you're alive. The bad news is we've got to remove your legs. So I don't know if anyone here has ever been in a coma, but when you come out of a coma, you don't really realize that you were in a coma. And when the doctor said remove the legs, I thought he meant, oh, move my legs to the other side of the bed. And he said, no, DeWayne, remove. And my daughter said, you mean cut off his legs? My daughter had flown in from Pittsburgh. And I said, cut off the legs? And the doctor said, yeah, and we'll save $250 if we don't like to say cut or amputate, we like to say remove. And so I'm still a little groggy, and I said, okay, $250, I'll save $250. Is that per leg, or is that for both legs? And my daughter is screaming, Dad, it doesn't matter how much it costs. You're not going to remove my father's legs. Part of the drug protocol that they put me on, because my blood glucose level had spiked at 1,337. And I didn't know what that meant, but I could tell by the look on the doctor's face that it wasn't good. So they put me on a protocol of insulin, 60 units a day, of Lantus and Humalog. They put me on Coumadin because I was struggling with deep vein thrombosis, and I had two major blood clots, so there was a possibility of a pulmonary embolism. I also had hypertriglyceridemia, which is no disrespect meant to the medical profession, but they come up with some fancy names for a lot of these diseases. Hypertriglyceridemia is basically you have too much fat in your blood. Well, I had been diagnosed with diabetes, which means you have too much glucose in your blood. So I had a combination of too much fat and too much glucose. So try to imagine taking a beverage, Kool-Aid, and you add a bunch of sugar to it. It gets very syrupy. Throw in some animal fat, stir it up. That's what my blood was like. And so they had to put me on a Coumadin to try to break down the blood clots, to try to thin out my blood. And they put me on Lipitor because my cholesterol also was off the charts. It didn't work. I was alive, but I wasn't getting any better. So they sent me home.
Did you a favor?
Yeah. And said, well, DeWayne, good luck. But luckily, my daughter had decided to take off some time from work. And she had purchased all of the blood glucose equipment and set up my lab in the house so I could begin testing my blood glucose and collecting information, because she knows I love that stuff. And the doctor said, DeWayne, you need to test your blood glucose 3 to 4 times a day. But I didn't have anything else to do. So I want everybody to know, it's not because I was that smart as an engineer. I just decided that I needed something to do because my daughter was bossing me around. And I think she enjoyed it.